Welcome to the Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast. In today's episode, we dive into the fascinating realm of AI-powered note-taking and its transformative impact on performance. Join our insightful discussion with experts Tim Keefe and Andreas Wieman as we explore the incredible potential of AI in enhancing productivity.
Hi, everybody. This is Tim Keefe with Transform CX, and welcome to another SDSS Podcast with Tim and Andreas Wieman. So how's it going there, Mr. Wieman? It's a Sunday morning, and the 49ers lost last weekend, so we don't have to talk about that. But I wanted to, anyway, how are you doing?
Yeah, I was going to say, you were just ready to jump into it, and you're throwing days out there. So hopefully we publish this on the next Sunday or something. I don't know. No, it's going pretty good. I'm still waiting also for the opportunity to announce my name first instead of yours, but I'll hold out for the next one that we do.
You know, I could stop the recording and we could do that if you want.
No, we'll do it next time. I want to see if you're taking the coaching I'm providing and actually implement it.
Speaking of coaching, I wanted to throw out a topic that was really kind of interesting to me this week. You know, we've seen more and more of these AI note-taking tools that are populating all over the place, right? Sometimes you get on a meeting and, you know, they're already there on the call. But, you know, I've been using one without naming what it is, and it's fascinating. The other day, you know, you get an email after the call and it kind of hits the high points, which is great. I mean, it really is pretty good note-taking. And I'm getting a lot of feedback from people who aren't able to attend meetings that it's a really good way for them to still feel like they're connected to what was ever going on. But there were a bunch of actually interesting metrics once I logged into the portal of the application. And I don't know, I want to get some of your feedback on that. But I mean, things like percentage of time of the meeting people talked, sentiment analysis. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's really, really fascinating. So we have, and if you've listened to our cast in the past, we're huge advocates for automated QA and kind of having the right NLU and NLP tools to accurately capture one, just the vocabulary, the conversations, but then also if there is sentiment analysis, you know, machine learning algorithms applied to it to categorize it correctly and just give you more data to make decisions on. I think it's invaluable. And to be honest, I didn't really get in the frame of mind where in meetings like Tim and I just had with a couple of our cohorts, it gave us this analysis. And so we were able to see the sentiment filter. We're able to see, for example, Tim talked for 54% of the meeting. You know, that was an hour. And it gave us a transcript that was pretty darn accurate. And so one, full disclosure, I think a lot of InfoSec or legal folks may get a little cautious. I'll use that adjective on any kind of tool that obviously is using NLP and NLU that's going up through the cloud and then warehousing it and where that's warehoused, etc. But I'm going to skip all of that for another cast and just say, look, let's assume all of this is secure and safe and protected. But the output that it provides, I think is pretty invaluable for these types of meetings. I mean, it's one thing when you're looking at process adherence analyzation for a tool like this, but another when you're having a collective meeting of the minds with strategic conversations that are occurring. And I think if you have the right frequency of recording these and being able to capture these pretty statically as they occur, you go back and analyze like you would any other data output metric, go back and see what correlations you see, what kind of patterns you see, what kind of correlation and causation, I should say, you can see, and help that manage as another tool in your arsenal to be able to make data-driven decisions.
Yeah, I thought about it a little bit the same way. I mean, traditionally, like we'd assign somebody to be a scribe on a call, and either they did or didn't do a great job, and then of course we got the recordings, which would, you know, generally be transcribed, but again, it's just a transcription of what happened. Yeah, but
right, all by humans.
All by humans. But I think now there is a coaching element of it, right? If you choose to take it that way. And, you know, I think I always have this challenge about meetings in general. Like, why are you having a meeting? You know, is it just broadcast? Like I'm here to tell you something like status. well,
Right.
crap, why don't we just publish that, right? Like, use whatever collaboration tool you're using, or just send out an
Exactly.
email, group email, and say, here's the weekly status. You have any questions, comments, whatever, come back. But I think more and more we have to be respectful of people's time. I think we talk about that a lot. And, I know for me during the pandemic anyway, it was 14 hours a day of just back to back Zoom calls. And I would say most of the time I was an attendee. And I mean, I had to laugh because I got a treadmill while I was doing that. And I would just be like, just crank up the treadmill to 4 miles an hour because nobody's expecting me to say anything. And then you go, why am I here? But I think one of the things I think is really interesting is, one, I'm getting a transcribed set of notes, right, without having to assign somebody to do that. Great. Two, the notes are, as you said, pretty accurate. I think it's really interesting how some of these tools are really identifying like key quotes or key topic areas, even if that's not what you intended it to be. Like if you went in and said, we're having, I don't know, a conversation about, we're thinking about product marketing. And well, that conversation spins off into some product development conversation that you really want to make sure you capture and you follow up on. And so I think that's great because then you can actually use it as a little bit of project management and start assigning stuff to people, and they can look at the context of where this came from. In the old days would be like, hey, I came out of a meeting and we're going to do X, Y, Z, and you got it. And let me tell you, 50% of what we talked about, maybe that got us there.
Well, and that's the cool thing too. When I say humans and robots, etc., what I'm referencing is the static application of the platform and how it's coded to capture items. When you introduce humans to it, I may interpret something and log something that I think's important versus something that you think is important. An interesting stat that I'm just looking at right now too. I know I was, throwing a little shade at Tim because he had 54% of the talking time on there. But guess who had the highest words per minute on the call? I did, at 187. So that's not really a surprise, I don't think, to anybody.
You're an incredibly efficient guy. What can we say?
I try to be. It even gauged it. It showed it gave a score of the contributiveness to the conversation, and I got the highest score. But I'm kidding. That one I made up. Although I'm sure that would be true if that was the case. No, it's just
maybe.
I'll take a maybe. That was I expected quick rejection, so I'm warming up. But no, I think it's really good on just having another source point of data that you can make decisions from. Like you said, you just gave us several great examples of being able to share context, frame of reference for other teams that may be impacted down the stream, and then you can selectively share out of the transcript what needs to be shared, with that group. If there are things that maybe they don't need to know, that you don't want them to know, it just gives you options. I think we need to open our eyes and realize all the great tools that are out there, Gen AI included, and all of the other technology that sits and powers Gen AI. There's so many great tools out there. I think you need to see the options, not just look at the out of the box that the manufacturer is saying it hits on, right? I'm sure that's great too, but think of the options that are out there and how you can leverage these tools.
Well, and again, from a leadership perspective, kind of spinning maybe a little bit of a tangent to that. I mean, how we use the information is one thing, but I also do think there is a coaching element to it that is, if you decide to pay attention to it, could be worthwhile. Because to your point, you think about, okay, if I'm leading the session or I'm the supervisor and I'm dominating the conversation, am I excluding other conversation? Right? It's always a big risk, right? If the boss speaks first, nobody is going to counter what the boss says. So that's a big coaching item for me because I have a tendency to just blurt out what's on top of mind. The other thing I thought was very interesting was the words per minute, because I do think that, depending on the audience, and especially because in our virtual company, we talk with a lot of people all over the world where English may not be their first language. And their ability, they might be translating in their head you would be if you were listening to a meeting in Spanish or Italian or whatever other languages you may speak. And taking the time to allow the audience to do that, or it can be really, really valuable to your ability to get your point across. Because if you're just doing your normal New Yorker spiel like I do sometimes. Everybody just goes, they just nod their heads, and they're inside their head, they're going, I have no freaking idea what that guy just said. But if I keep nodding, he'll keep talking, and then the meeting will be over. We've all been there, right? Either we're the one doing the talking and going, oh, everybody's listening to me. Look at all those nodding heads.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. But again, it's just another data point that gives you options to consider all of these things. And everything that you just said is absolutely important. And think of the folks that would be in that meeting who are doing that. They're processing what's being said in the native language and then translating it in their head and then, reciting it back in English for, the call that we were on. And so it's a great data point to say, yeah, maybe we need to slow down if we're explaining something, ensure that there's checks to ensure that there's maximum absorption. And now we do have this tool that we can, the note-taking tool that we can send over to them and obviously get it translated, hopefully with a good degree of accuracy from English to the native language. That will help further augment that anymore. But the point is, these tools are out there, and I don't think people are potentially using them to the maximum ability that they could. I think that's kind of the point.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I know I'm not. I think this was a little bit of an aha moment this week to really take 5 minutes and look at what I'm getting and go, wow, there's a lot more here than I realized. What would I do with it? Although I do have to admit, your point at the beginning of the meeting was something I hadn't thought about, is that I could just see the subpoena, not only for all digital messages, which if you've ever been through that, is a massive, very disruptive day. But now you can see, all the emails and all recorded meeting notes like that are sitting in the cloud. So yeah, there's definitely things to think about with regard to that with legal retention, and probably, and again, to your point, probably worth a conversation. I'd love to bring in one of our legal advisors at some point and talk about that, because what should you do about retaining some of this stuff? Probably not keep it around forever if you can, but that may be a problem with your provider. It's something else to think about with all these cloud-based services that were popping up all over the place. I mean, again, how do we use AI? I think is the underlying topic here a little bit, but like practical AI in the work environment, other than using ChatGPT to write our memos for us. I don't know anybody would do that, but I could see where that might be a use case for it. or for a speech at your daughter's wedding. Like, again, I have no idea who would do something like that, but why not?
I'm sure there's no projection there, but I'm with you.
I'm just, I'm opining about possible use cases. I'm not acknowledging or stepping up and raising my hand and say I did that. Anyway, as always, great to chat. I think next week we're going to have a really interesting conversation around data presentation, and we're going to have a guest, Gabby Steele, who's the CEO of Prequel, joining us, and we're very excited to have her on the show next week. So looking forward to it. Mr. Andreas?
Yeah, no, everything. Again, you just jump in and cover all the great points, and then leave me just to say, hey, thanks for listening. We appreciate it.
That's the most important point of all, I think.
I like that.
All right. Thank you all. And this is Tim and Andreas with our SDSS Leadership Podcast. If you'd like to listen more, if you have any comments, we're welcome to hear from you. And you can also read about what else we're doing at Transform CX at www.transform-cx.com. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks, everybody.